Good evening, sports fans. My name is Crobat for the win, and I'm joined here today with
Jolt
and Aster.
And we're going to be jumping into GBA Season 10's playoffs. Today we're presenting you a playoff podcast. So Week 10 happened, and some teams were eliminated and some teams moved on. I definitely want to take a little bit of time to talk about some of those games, maybe do a quick recap of scores. What are you thinking, guys?
Yeah, it sounds like a great plan. Maybe let's start with the Edmonton and Chicago game. We know that had some pretty big playoff implications for really both teams.
Yeah, massive, honestly. And Dell really just needed one more point to make it through here. And he got really, really close. Really well played game overall, taking down Q in just a very systematic fashion. Really utilizing Slowking correctly throughout the game. He made a few missteps, and honestly, just a big win here could have landed Dell in the playoffs, but unfortunately, the Coilers did not make it through.
Yeah, no, it was a really interesting game, and it definitely proved how, the reason why Galarian Slowking is rated as highly as it is with his defensive typing and just being able to take the hits that it was taking. But what I thought was interesting about that game was Iron Valiant didn't even hit the field, right? So maybe that was something that could have been different in this game if, maybe Dell pushed the issue a little more with the Iron Valiant to try to get a sweep going, because he needed that bonus point, right? Like, he really needed those bonus points to make playoffs here. So I don't know. That was interesting, but really a well-played game on his part, I thought.
Yeah, and that's basically what I said in our Week 8 playoff pitcher podcast, was that he was in an okay spot. He needed some bonus points, though, to really jump ahead of people ahead of him, or needed to rely on a bunch of people to lose. And they didn't lose, really. But the fact that he was that close, just shows that with the point system, it's tough to really be out of the pitcher.
And funny enough, the 5-5 teams didn't make playoffs, and the 6-4 made it. So it's almost like the points didn't matter this season.
It's true. That's so true. Like, at least from a record standpoint, that's exactly what happened. But yeah, like, it's interesting having the points holding more weight than the overall record. You could have seen a team with an inferior record make playoffs, but that's not quite how it played out this time.
I know, and I know we had that in the rule book, and it literally does say that points are ahead of wins and losses, but to actually see it for the most part lay out that way is pretty crazy. But also, I think it's pretty crazy the pylon in the middle from fourth place all the way to eighth place. Yeah, eighth place. Sorry, I had to count in my head. They were pretty much all within a couple points of each other, so everybody was just really in that middle fighting for it. And yeah, so that was pretty cool to watch too.
Just imagine 2 more damage rolls that left you under 5 HP. That's all it would have taken, huh?
Yep.
Hey, let's move on to the next matchup here. We had New York against San Diego. Also a very important game for Goldoa and the New York Empoleon, needing to secure the win in order to have a chance at staying in playoffs, and it was not even guaranteed. If Edmonton or Wolverhampton was able to score additional bonus points in their games, then Goldoa could have been out with only getting the 3-0 win this week, but he was able to pull that off. What'd you think about that game, guys?
So Goldoa, back when I was looking at the Week 8 playoff pitcher, he had 15 points, and he lost in Week 9. He was in big jeopardy of not making the playoffs with that Week 9 loss. He absolutely needed a win this week, and thankfully he got it. But it was only a small win that gave him 2 points. That's why he ended up tying with Wolverhampton and with Edmonton there. He was only bailed out by the fact that he had a slightly better record in the end at 6-4. But basically what I said there was more or less right. For him to feel comfortable, he did not comfortably make the playoffs. For him to feel comfortable, he needed more bonus points there.
It's actually quite surprising that he didn't go for a bigger win in this game, because he had every opportunity to. He just played it super safe, really using Zapdos to sponge hits throughout the entire game. And that Leafeon was huge with Leech Seed, really taking down everything. The Toxic Spike came into effect against the Annihilate, etc. But I truly feel like Goldoa could have won this game by more. He didn't know what the results of the other games were going to be. He didn't know what kind of scoreline he needed. So he should have pushed for a bigger win, especially with the position that he was in against D.Rey. And I don't think that he assessed the threat of him being eliminated from playoffs as strongly as he should have, because he had a super solid game. This was like a masterful win from Goldoa, maybe his best game of the season, honestly.
We can't, honestly, being in the playoffs, we can't rag on him too hard. He's had an awesome season. He's had a couple ups and downs, but overall, really solid coach, really solid performance overall from the season.
Yep.
And as Tom Z always says, once you're in the playoffs, everything's 0-0. Once you're in those playoff doors, everything resets. I'm paraphrasing Tom. So he's got a chance to prove himself here, and all he's got to do is get a couple wins, and he can win the championship.
One thing I do really need to give props to him for is Zapdos. Didn't it feel like we were watching like a Gen 6 or a Gen 7 game without us just sitting there a wall and everything? That's all I could think of watching that game.
He has the Gen 6 team. The eject button Mew, the Garchomp getting in damage early, the Greninja trying to sweep and not doing it because it was afraid of getting Thunder Wave just like in Gen 6.
Wait a minute, guys. He didn't put Pokemon Y on the Switch?
No.
No.
No, he didn't. It was that was not the game he was playing. Thankfully.
What game was I watching then?
I don't know, man. But yeah, no, Goldoa's done great with this team all season, and yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about his team and his team members here in a bit. But was there any other matchup you wanted to cover, Joel?
Yeah, we can take a look at the Wolverhampton game as well, since we've mentioned that team also landing at 17 points, and he did about all he could to get himself in the race. Oh my gosh. Dominant 4-0 victory over Calgary this week. Great Tusk with 6 KOs. What in the world?
Wow.
Insane.
I need to start too and say they had 8 points going into, or right after week 8 rather. They had 8 points. So Wolverhampton used the bonus points and the extra points to almost the fullest potential. I mean, that was honestly even better than George did throughout the season. In 2 weeks, he almost clawed his way back. All he needed was one more point somewhere else throughout the season, and he would have been in, even with a 5-5 record.
Yeah, a complete reversal of situation almost. That would have been crazy, honestly, with how low Jack was sitting on the standings for the entirety of the season, to suddenly be at 7th and tied in points with 6th place. It's kind of crazy, but that just shows you how good of a Mon Great Tusk is. It's like roll compression the Mon. I'm quoting L5, another Draft League player. But yeah, roll compression dash the Mon. It literally does everything you want it to, and it spins some weeks, it switches in defensively some weeks it can run Choice Band, and some weeks it does what it did this week, and it runs a Booster Energy and attack, gets off one Rapid Spin, and then bulks up in front of a Choice-locked Grimmsnarl, and then just completely sweeps.
I still can't believe a Donphan knockoff is that good.
It ain't a knockoff, it's an upgrade. So
you're saying Donphan's the knockoff now?
Oh yeah. Donphan's the fake, for sure.
But definitely hats off to Just Weavile for a really strong season, and definitely an exclamation point at the end with the 2 back-to-back 6-0 score lines for his Pokemon. It was Great Tusk this week, and it was Frostmoth the week before, so great usage of the low tier and the high tiers on that team. The other game that really had playoff implications, really, each team in this last week had some sort of playoff implications, or at least each matchup there was someone who did. So Borussia versus the Bullet Punch Club, the now number 1 seed in the playoffs being the Bullet Punch Club, and then the Borussia Donphan landing in 4th place, actually had a chance at securing the number 2 overall seed in one of the 2 first-round buys if they were to pick up the win there. But the Bullet Punch Club was able to continue with their march through the season with a 3-0 victory, ending with a 9-1 record. So, I don't know, any comments about that game, guys?
Unfortunately, they fell from where they were in the Playoff Pitcher podcast post Week 8 at number 2. They fell to 4. And in that span, they only gained 3 points. If they had just gained, 1 or 2 extra along the way, they might have been able to still be in the top somewhere, maybe even at 2 if they just won that other game. Frankly, if they won the game versus the Bullet Punch Club.
Yeah, a win in either of the last 2 weeks would have secured second, I believe, for Lars. I'm not sure which of the two was a home game and whatnot. I think this week was a home game for Lars, but
so he actually did win his week 9 game. That was against Calgary.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Week 10 against the Bullet Punch Club. So he won his away game and lost his home game. So
yes.
that could have made a
difference
to it.
because of the 5 HP live, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what it was. Okay, so yeah, but as a result of that, regardless, Playmore and the Victinis were able to leapfrog over Lars, and now Playmore has the exactly, yeah, funny, huh? Yeah, so now now Playmore has the bye week in the first round of playoffs, and that's pretty big, obviously. It's pretty huge, and falling into 4th position instead of 3rd as well is pretty big, because now he has to play Q instead of Goldoa. Nothing wrong with playing Goldoa. Like, it's still going to be a tough matchup, but obviously you'd rather play against the 6th seed team than the 5th, logically, right? So it's big. These points have very big implications here.
Yeah. That said, though, Lars has still had a very strong season. Once again, some ups, some downs, but he's proven why he's a contender. And I'll use the words of Tom again. He's in those playoff doors. And anybody in the playoffs is doing something right. And Lars is obviously no exception. He knows what he's doing. He's been around a long time. So he certainly can make a wave. He's not out of it by any means.
Yeah, and one comment about Lars too that I think really deserves mentioning is, if anyone watching this is confused about the point system and how it's supposed to work, Lars gets it. Right, Lars very clearly is going for 4-0 sweeps every single week. You saw it with that Fairy Cresselia. He continues to bring it, all the time. Terra into Fairy, and just, tries to get 4 KOs with it if at all possible, or whatever else on the team happens to be good in that game. He does a good job of explaining it, and really I can say the same thing about Goldoa too. They both really made a point to try to get those bonus points everywhere where they can, and they both ended up making it into playoffs, so it does pay off to do that, and props to both of them for that.
I think certain coaches tried to do that, but a lot of them didn't quite grasp it. It is such a new and a novel idea, and while I think there was broad success with it, I think certain people just didn't grasp how they could try to get those. They just kind of thought of it as an incidental, when obviously you can't will a bonus point into existence, but there are certain things you can do to heavily help yourself or put odds better in your favor for certain weeks or for certain occurrences to occur. And you're right, I think Lars was one of the coaches that tried to do stuff like that throughout the season. And got to credit to the Arcaniners. Obviously, you mentioned the Empoleon as another team to do it. And a few others along the way during certain weeks also did things that were conducive to getting bonus points. But hopefully after the totality of the season, after seeing the whole season, so people might get it more. So that way in the future, we'll probably revamp the bonus point system a little bit. I'm sure we'll think of some new ideas. We'll figure something out. But now that it's on the map, coaches will be able to get it and try to play it and use it to their advantage where possible.
So let's talk about the last 2 matchups here from week 10. We saw Atlanta against the Copenhagen Sawsbucks. Atlanta picking up a 2-0 win in that game, and Playmore versus the San Francisco Arcaniners picking up a 3-0 win in that game. And if we were just to look at the scores of those 2 matches, these 2 teams will be tied at 22 bonus points, or 22 points total. With the head-to-head actually going to Atlanta due to the victory for Atlanta over Playmore earlier this season. Wow. However, we do have final end-of-season bonus points, and we will talk more about this next week when we look into our end-of-season awards for the Pokemon and the coaches. However, Playmore did have the KO leader of the season, the Roaring Moon, and I don't recall the stat line off the top of my head, but they got +1 point to their total due to that, and because of that slid to the 2nd spot. That was a very impressive use of Roaring Moon. That thing is busted, guys. Oh my gosh.
I mean, especially with Sun, right? But just a Terra Roaring Moon in general is very, very good. It's about on par with Terra Dragonite. I think it ended the season with 21 kills, 5 deaths, so a plus 16 on its kill KDR. So kind of crazy, yeah.
You want to know what's even crazier, Aster? Its KDR stat going into week 9 was 10. So 15 kills, 5 deaths. It was in 3rd place behind Meowscarada at 13 for KDR. And then Meowscarada just went quiet the last 2 weeks. And Roaring Moon leapfrogged. Sorry, I stole your joke.
Yeah.
Ahead. So, honestly, props to Playmore, Tarheel, and the whole group for doing that. And once again, utilizing the bonus points. I mean, he did an excellent job of capturing that, and that made a big difference. He now gets a week off. He can spend a week, kicking his feet up in the hot tub, chilling with a drink by his side. Like, he could just chill. And now
the whole org can chill for a week.
So thanks to Roaring Moon. On the back of Roaring Moon, he's hitting hot tub time this week. So
yeah.
All right, so we'll go through our regular season standings. Remember, it's 10 games played. So we had Calgary Flamethrowers in 12th place with 5 points, 3 wins, and 7 losses. The San Diego Snugglers with 6 points, 2 wins and 8 losses. We had Copenhagen Sawsbucks, 7 points, 2 wins and 8 losses. San Francisco Arcaniners, 11 points, 2 wins, 8 losses. The Edmonton Coilers almost came back with 17 points, 5 wins, 5 losses. The Wolverhampton Weaviles, remember, leapfrogging at the end of the season. 17 points, 5 wins, 5 losses. Now here's the cutoff. The top 6 are the teams that make the playoffs. We have New York Empoleon in 6th place with 17 points, 6 wins, and 4 losses. The Chicago Dragapults, 19 points, 6 wins, and 4 losses. In 4th place, the Borussia Donphan, 21 points, 6 wins, 4 losses. In 3rd, the Atlanta Victinis, 22 points, 7 wins, 3 losses. And now our top 2 teams, the 2 teams with a first round bye for the playoffs. 2nd place, we have Playmore Esports with 23 points, 7 wins, 3 losses. And then the Bullet Punch Club with 9 wins, 1 loss. First place, very impressive. So regarding the seeding for the top 6 teams of the playoffs, as previously mentioned, the Bullet Punch Club and Playmore Esports both have a first round bye. So it will be the 3rd place Atlanta Victinis versus the 6th place New York Empoleon playing in round 1 of the playoffs. And we will also have the Borussia Donphan playing the Chicago Dragapults, 4th versus 5th place for the first round as well.
Yeah, so with those standings, I guess those top 6 teams moving on to playoffs, let's dig into those matchups a little bit and actually just take a look at the coaches and some of the success they've had this season. So maybe let's start it off here with Atlanta, our number 3 seed, who will be facing the New York Empoleon. What have you guys thought of Jay this season?
So I said this at the beginning, right after the initial auction, actually, the first 5 Pokemon on the team, that I thought Jay had a very solid understanding of what made a good bulky offense, and he made it work super well. Like the remainder of his picks, he chose like 3 Pokemon that would come to a lot of matchups, and then 3 that would come to very select few matchups. But he used the Skeledirge so well this season, the Urshifu as well, the Tornadus and the Sandy Shocks especially. But like everything that he's brought for a very good reason, and he's clearly mapped out each matchup a lot more than I was expecting. I didn't know much about Jay, but just from the first 5 picks, I thought, okay, well, he's going to play a more defensive style. No, he actually held a lot of the initiative through all of his games, and he understood the pieces that he needed to win every game and how to make them function. All of his sweepers, Urshifu and Skeledirge specifically. I think the Dirge really impressed me, the way that he used it, right? He proved this season, I think, that it's a top 10 Terramon in the format. because it really is. It's super strong, and it only really needs those two typings, right? It's initial type, it's base typing, and the fairy typing just make it super hard to deal with. So that's the impression that Jay gave me this season.
Yeah, I personally was impressed with not only his usage of Skeledirge, which, I mean, that blew me away, because on paper that thing doesn't look like it's, overly versatile, at least from, kind of my glance over it, but he used it extremely well, and it just seemed like every single team that he encountered every single week struggled to break through it. And yeah, it's a bulky Pokemon, but that takes a skillful coach to make that happen, no matter what it is. Someone can have Cresselia and it can be useless. Someone can have, Deoxys, whatever it is, Deoxys defense, it can be the fattest thing ever and totally useless in the wrong hands. But Jay really showed his ability to use bulky Pokemon effectively, and he also used momentum really effectively on this team, and I personally think that's why this team saw so much success from a building standpoint, being able to have momentum options on almost 50% of this roster, in addition to strong breaking options. That Urshifu hits very hard. The Zarude, when he brought it, hit extremely hard. Tornadus, we all know, is a monster, so he just used his threat super well, his momentum options super well, and he had the bulk to back it up. So overall, I was very impressed with his building throughout the season, and I have a lot of respect for him as a player. I didn't know him super well until the GBA season, and I'm impressed.
Absolutely. I don't have anything super extra to add, but just it's been really fun watching Jay as a coach and as a player, and his growth throughout the season. So major props to him. All right, so our next playoff competitor will be the New York Empoleon in GoldoaDragon. What do we think about him?
Yeah, I mean, I think Goldoa showed that the Gen 6 Pokemon, the Gen 6 threats, are still threats today. That has not changed in that amount of time. And, Greninja having access to both Battle Bond and Protean obviously being nerfed this generation, it still proved to be an incredible threat to everyone he encountered. I think he brought it every single week, if I recall correctly, and it did extremely well for him. And a very reliable top-tier Pokemon for his team. And it was interesting to see he and Addison's usage of Mew. I know we saw, what was the item that switches you out when you click close combat? I can't recall what it was.
Eject Pack.
Eject Pack, yeah. Seeing use of something like that, and I know against Playmore it didn't work out particularly well, but I think we saw in other instances throughout the season from them. Interesting creativity coming from a Mew that, at least in this generation, is pressured into being a little more offensive rather than the defensive route without having recovery. So, really interesting usage of that. And Ceruledge as well stood out to me as a Pokemon that, I mean, obviously it's one of their Terra captains, so they were able to use it effectively as a sweeper, but that thing's a threat. Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
I will say this. I think that Ceruledge is the best Terra Pokemon right after Roaring Moon in the format. I think it might even be better than D-Knight. And I think that this thing had the opportunity to get many more kills than it did. But the thing is, Goldoa has other threats on the team, and things that pick up KOs in interesting ways, like Greninja's Water Shuriken, for example, and we saw the offensive utilization of Mew, momentum moves for Volt Switch and U-turn, right? You have the Gren and the Zapdos that can clean up KOs and that are a little bit faster. You want to position the Ceruledge in a very specific way. So as a result, Goldoa only ended the season with 13 kills. That's not a lot. Only 13. Yeah, the Ceruledge, I personally think that Ceruledge, just like the other Fire and Ghost on the other side of this matchup, is quite a good Terramon, possibly top 3. I personally think it's the second best Terramon in our format. So, but yeah, no, Goldoa proved me completely wrong, honestly, this season. After the first 4 picks, I was like, what is this Gen 6 team? Of course, the Ceruledge completely throws that off. But the rest of the team does sort of look like a Gen 6 team. Swap out Overquill for a Quillfish, and you've literally got a Gen 6 team for the rest of the members. So it's on first glance, it doesn't come across as taking advantage of the power creep that this generation has given us. But really, I think that Goldoa just used all of these mons to their maximum potential and capability. He did a very good job, especially with the Cerulege and the Greninja, but just everything as a whole. He's really shown why it doesn't matter what a team looks like on the surface, it's how you use it.
Yeah, for sure. I just need him to tell me how he got Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire on the Switch. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, we may never know.
One interesting point in this matchup too is this obviously is a rematch from earlier in the season where Goldoa's assistant coach Addison played this game, and I'm pretty sure it was JV on the other side in that game. I'd have to go back and look. So this is a rematch, and the New York Empoleon picked up the win also in that week. So despite Goldoa being the lower rated seed in this game, they do hold the head-to-head advantage from the earlier matchup this season. Now, generally in Draft League, that could actually turn into a disadvantage with the rematch typically favoring the one who lost the previous match, especially when the two coaches are so even. But that does, make you think, okay, maybe the team matchup here could favor Goldoa a little bit too. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But, we'll just let that battle play out and go from there. So let's go ahead and jump into the next game here.
What do we think about Q versus the Borussia Donphan? So let's start with Q.
So Q, for me, he just drafted really well. I think that his team is so solid. I'm not a huge fan of an Amorous T, and I think that it has been able to trade with a lot of things, but I think there are better fairies that he could have filled that slot with. As for the rest of his team, though, Dragapult and Iron Moth specifically have really shown through this season. The Terra Iron Moth, he made the correct choice tearing the Iron Moth, by the way. I think that was the right call, because Moth is kind of just a mon you want to get in, get a kill and a half, and kind of leave it at that. And then the rest of his team can really pick up the kills from there with Bullet Punch from Scizor, the Iron Hands being as bulky as it is, and the Dragapult being as fast as it is, makes it very easy for, once you've gotten that initial breakthrough with Moth, you can kind of just clean from there. And that's sort of what I saw Q do all season, was really open the door for everything else using the Moth. And I mean, it shows with his record, 6-4, obviously 19 points, sitting nicely at the 5th position. And I think that he's gotten a very good grasp over this team. We actually saw the Serena come for the first time in this latest matchup against Dell. But even the Ursaring was well used. The Hippo, maybe not the best ground type anymore, lack of Toxic and whatnot. But it's definitely a very well-rounded team, and I think that Q has proved to us that he has a very profound understanding of Pokemon, from the way that he speaks in his videos, the way that he talks about turn by turn, how things are occurring, understanding of what his opponent's potential sets are, understanding of calcs, how quick he is with it. That's not easy to do during a live con. Speaking from experience, and he's got a very good grasp over this game.
Yeah, I just love how, I don't know if aggressive is the right word. He's just kind of he just goes for it, he doesn't really
falls to the wall.
Yeah, he doesn't second guess himself. He just does it. And I really admire that, because he's a 6-4 record, very competitive in every game he played. Clearly that's definitely a testament to his skill as well. So, awesome season all around by Q. And the Hippowdon was really interesting this season to me, because, it is an A-tier Pokemon. We're used to seeing Hippowdon being, a good wall in draft format. It really has been ever since the inception, but pretty sure we just saw that thing die both times it came, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it did anything.
No.
So, but yeah, using his S tiers the way that he did, the Dragapult, the Iron Moth, to Astra's point, both of those, fantastic Pokemon for him, and using the Iron Moth as the Terra Captain definitely proved to be the right call. It had a stat line of 14-5, it looks like, on the season. So, very, very strong, and Dragapult's hard enough to prepare for on its own. You didn't really need to give it anything more, to make it even more busted than it already
exactly
is. I would hate prepping for Dragapult. I'm so glad I never have to. But definitely good points all around. And one thing I thought was interesting was his use of the Paldea Tauros as well. I thought he used that extremely well throughout the season, and really took advantage of the fighting water typing, which outside of Keldeo, you really don't see that very much in draft format. I think, and obviously Keldeo's not even around now. Poliwrath, you never see that, right? So seeing that sort of offensive typing in play from Tauros, which just blows me away still, was cool to see. And the Iron Hands too, right? He uses fighting types really effectively, I felt. throughout the season, both in like a defensive role, being able to switch into a variety of threats, but also offensively with Fighting always just being a really good offensive type. It always has been and always will be. So overall great usage of the team. Definitely was a more of an offensive build. And Amorous, not the biggest fan of it either, kind of to Aster's point, but I think this matchup will be interesting. And Q did knock off Borussia earlier this season as well. This is way back in week 2, so this could be a chance to double down on that this week.
Yeah. I also just want to say one more thing too. They made the mascot pick a reality and executed it basically perfectly.
Yeah. Something that you do like to have with a ghost type, by the way, I will mention this, is double fightings. Funny enough. They really like taking advantage of the and weakening the fairies and threatening the dark types that your ghost type doesn't like dealing with. And in this case, like the Dragapult specifically, right? It doesn't like dealing with fairies or darks, and having the double fighting was just really solid for Q all season. But yeah, we can check out Lars's team now and how he's used it this season.
Yeah, in this one we see the Enamorous mirror match is what we have here. Lars had the Enamorous and the Iron Treads as his S tiers, and it was funny to see how many times this season that Iron Treads had 2 lives in the game as well, thanks to the Palm Mod. I think he revived that at least twice throughout the season. So Lars's team was interesting, like really interesting. We saw Cloth do stuff, we saw little Bramble do stuff. Like it was really fun to watch, and the Fairy Cresselia makes me want to puke. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, Bramblegast and Cloth are very good value picks. Bramblegast can be like a hit or a miss, really. Really depends on very specific matchups, but he happened to have them for the ones that the Bramblegast came. And Cloth is actually really good with regen. I'm a big fan of Cloth, and I think it's very versatile and is a very good low-tier rocker and just rock type, if that's what your team is lacking. And as you can see, Lars is quite weak to flying, as Iron Treads isn't the greatest flying resist, and his electric type is also a fighting type. So Bramblegast also covers some flying moves too, thanks to Wind Rider. But yeah, no, the Terra Cresselia, I think that Lars has kind of leaned into it a little too much, if I'm being honest. Like, he's brought the Terra Volcanion a couple of times, but it feels like the Cresselia is the only thing terastallizing, and it's basically his main fairy, even though he already has a fairy. Now, having 2 fairies is not necessarily a bad thing, one offensive, one defensive, but I think that the Cresselia is starting to get a little bit predictable, possibly, and that Lars's game plans are starting to be a little too streamlined, and that's what I feared when I saw this initial build and draft, was that his game plans were going to revolve around a lot of the same stuff, right? Early Iron Treads, Revival Blessing on the Palmot, trying to basically do damage with Cresselia and just wall up, and then maybe try to revenge kill things with Weaviler and Amorous near the tail end of the game. And the problem with that is that it's very easy to prep against. I'm curious to see if Q is going to be able to take advantage of these things, right? He's got a Scizor, best fairy check, right? So you can definitely check that in Amorous and that Cresselia. And it just has the Volcanion in the way, really. So if you can call the turns that Lars goes into the Volcanion correctly, get U-turn momentum, get in his Iron Hands, maybe Volt Switch around, because that's pretty free into Lars' team as well, because again, the 2 immunities don't really want to switch it on the Fighting Stab. So it might not be as easy for Lars in this quarterfinal matchup.
Lars actually has been red hot, to be honest. I was looking at his record here. After 4 weeks of the season, he was 1-4, or 1-3 rather, and then he rattled off 5 wins in a row. And I'm pretty sure he made that switch to Cresselia is right around that time. So, well, one thing is true: the Bullet Punch Club did do very well at taking down that Cresselia. I know the Dragonite threatened it a lot in that game with those Giga Impact, Terra Normal Giga Impact. I mean, come on.
It missed, yeah, but the E-Speed crit earlier.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe the Bullet Punch Club revealed something there to help handle the Cresselia, but I don't know. In my opinion, I think that was a pretty good pickup.
Yeah, no. I'm not saying that the Terra Cresselia is bad. I'm just saying that because the Cresselia became Terra, what happened is that Lars's team and game plans became a lot more predictable. And while people haven't been able to take advantage of that necessarily toward the tail end of the season, it became more apparent. And maybe that's what I meant to say and to get across, was that Lars's game plans are sort of becoming a little obvious. So we'll see if Q can take advantage.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the one thing to add on, though, I know, Joe, you said he was red hot, and I agree for that 5-week stretch he was, but he did get a loss in week 10, so for referring to Lars and Borussia Donphan. So hopefully they can right that ship. I mean, if they had 6 wins in a row, they'd be looking even stronger. Probably, potentially even in the bye. So just keep that in mind. Not looking to be a negative Nancy, but they just got to be careful.
Hey, you always want to go into playoff on a winning streak. Always want to go on a winning streak. It's easy to tilt after one loss. That's speaking from experience there for sure. So,
absolutely.
That's for sure. The Volcanion is one thing we haven't talked about too on that team. I know Volcanion we placed in the C tier, and I think a lot of people got some chuckles out of that. What do you guys think? Is Volcanion C tier or not?
I think it is. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it can be any higher. I think that it's maybe B, but I think C is fine for it, and it's kind of a mon that's flexible, can move between B and C, in my opinion.
I was gonna say maybe after the season, maybe I'd see it a little more as B, but obviously open to discussion.
All I'm saying is he brought it like every week, so I mean clearly it's good, and you don't normally see that out of a C tier unless it's your rocker. So
I mean, it is his water type, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like,
but it's not like I don't know. It's like a different kind of water type. You know, it doesn't really serve the purpose of your normal water type as you would expect, at least in my opinion.
Oh, the way he used it this season, I would say it did actually.
Yeah.
He was switching it on a lot of opposing water types, and as a water type itself, it's good at pressuring opposing waters. That's what it's actually quite good at, and that's part of the reason that he chose the Terra typing that he did.
Oh, that's true. That's a good point.
I don't know. It could definitely move up. I wouldn't be opposed to it.
I'm thinking B, but that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah.
To figure out in detail. That said, I think we've covered all the teams and the matchups. So the question is, who do we think is going to win it all?
Gosh, it's tough. It's tough, right? Bullet Punch Club has obviously been red hot, but they've also possibly shown their best teams against almost everyone they faced. So it's hard to win against the same team twice, especially when you start going against the top teams in the league. So I don't know. Honestly, I would have to say Atlanta has a very good chance with all the momentum options on that team. It's hard to prep for momentum. You can prep for specific threats a lot easier than you can prep for momentum. So I'm going to give the edge to Atlanta, I think.
Yeah, that's some good points, Joel. I am going to go with the Milwaukee Sawsbucks. Battler X for life.
Yeah, totally. That's definitely who's going to win it. It's going to come out of nowhere. Now I'm gonna make a surprise pick here. Funny enough, and I'm gonna say Goldoa takes it.
Ooh.
Yeah. I think that Goldoa has this knack for just staying cool under pressure, like completely cool. Whereas I don't think that the rest of our crew, our cast, have that specific trait. And I think that Goldoa's team is good enough to carry him to the championship. If he uses the Saraledge and the Greninja correctly in these final 3 matchups, quarters, semis, and finals, I truly do think that he can win this.
Yeah, those are some good points. Alright, so I don't see Battler X or the Milwaukee Sawsbucks on my screen, so I guess they aren't actually in the season. Sorry, guys. So I'm going to make a different pick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to actually pick... Look, anybody can say Bullet Punch Club being number 1, and to be fair, they have an amazing team. They're unstoppable through the regular season. They were unstoppable. I'm going to go with Play More Esports.
Ooh.
Because, so the Bullet Punch Club did beat Play More Esports during the season, but like you said, Joel, it's very tough to win in a rematch. We've all been there. the Bullet Punch Club are going to be going against, for the 2 games, they're in a bye week, obviously. They're going to have up to 2 games, and they're both going to be rematches against the top teams in the league. And one of the reasons why I like Playmore Esports specifically is I think they have a lot of momentum on their side, especially with how well, as of late, they've been utilizing Roaring Moon. And I like Roaring Moon's prospects against the other coaches they may have. And also just having a bye week, there's less room for error, right? They only have to play 2 games as opposed to 3. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, that would be my pick. Although anybody in the comment section who says it's going to be Bullet Punch Club, I could totally understand. I believe you. They are absolutely still neck and neck in it. And if they win it all, it would not shock me in the slightest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really interesting prediction, and we'll talk more about Playmore next week in next week's podcast when we start looking at those next games. But Playmore is a team that has played at both ends of the spectrum in terms of being fat and bulky versus being really offensive and risky with their play style. So that also gives them a lot more flexibility in team building. So I could totally see that too. To me, Atlanta, Playmore, Bullet Punch, gosh, any of these teams, right? Any of these teams could win it. I think it's going to be really exciting.
For sure. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing what these teams cook up in the playoffs. Because remember, as you said, they're all rematches for the most part. I think there's one team all the teams didn't play throughout the season. Yeah. So for the most part, they're all rematches. And as we said, they're almost always tougher on the person who won the previous time. It's very tough to win twice. So we might see some surprises in general. And as I said, that's kind of the basis for why winning in the regular season and being 9-1 for the Bullet Punch Club might be a somewhat of a curse.
It'd be a detriment, yeah.
All right, guys, with our predictions in the books, do you guys have any predictions on who's going to win for the season? Let us know in the comments below. We've got 6 teams left. All right, guys, I think we're good to wrap everything up. So, you have any concluding remarks?
Hey, I just can't wait for these games to come out. It's going to be a blast.
Yeah, I'm going to be excited to watch these 2. These are going to be high caliber. Get ready.
Absolutely. We're dealing with the high rollers here. So, alrighty, guys. We've been speaking long enough. Have yourself a fantastic day and take care.
Above all else, keep it shady. That's where I thought you were going.
Leave that in, I dare you.